Hello everyone and welcome to my 6th annual BreyerFest Surprise Horse Special Run Speculation video. Before we begin, an important disclaimer, I do not know what the surprise model is, I just find it fun to indulge in this elaborate guessing game to try and figure out what the surprise model might be. All the different criteria I come up with and use in this video is based on previous BreyerFest trends. There are no hard and fast rules to this because Breyer could technically do anything they wanted for the surprise model, but they have been pretty consistent in following some patterns. If this is your first time watching one of these videos, or you just need a refresher on how I do this, I go through all of Breyer's traditional scale molds, eliminating the ones that are very unlikely to be used, and then I pick my top guesses from there based on other factors like the BreyerFest theme and how much a particular mold has been done recently. I eliminate Breyer molds based on the following factors: that the surprise will be a traditional scale mold, that means no classics, stablemates, etc. It will be on a modern and fairly popular mold. Molds from this time frame are roughly the ones that have come out from the late 90s to present. However, the surprise won't be a mold that was just released within the past year or so. It won't be on a mold that's already been a BreyerFest Gambler's Choice model. It won't be on a mold that's been used as another model for this year's BreyerFest. That includes special runs, store specials, raffle models, and so on. It won't be on a mold that was used as a BreyerFest special run mold last year. Lastly, it typically relates to the theme in some way. Now let's talk about what we know about the Gambler's Choice model for this year. We know the surprise horse logo, price, and quantity. And on the BreyerFest blog, they said this about the surprise model. You know we can't reveal this one. We can't even give you a hint. All we can say is that Sláinte is how the Irish say cheers. And we know you'll be cheering when you unwrap this beauty at BreyerFest. Note that this was before they announced that BreyerFest will be online this year, which is why they said about unwrapping it actually at BreyerFest. We obviously don't get very much to work off of with this post and the other information we know, but from this BreyerFest blog post, I think there are two pieces of information that we can gather from this. One is that Sláinte is an Irish word, which is very relative to the Celtic theme, of course, and two, that this word means cheers. I also did some research and apparently it also means like good health as well. So those two things kind of work into my guesses for this year's BreyerFest surprise model. The logo for Sláinte Surprise also emphasizes that Celtic theme, and the price of it being the same price as it usually is also does give us some clues as well as what molds it might not end up being. I think with that price we can expect that it will be a typical traditional horse. It won't be a really small pony or anything like that. And I'll get more into talking about those things as we go through the list of molds and whatnot. I do think that Breyer picked a mold that sticks well to the Celtic theme for this model. Now there is always the possibility that they made this model relate more to their 70th anniversary by doing some kind of throwback to an old mold. But I don't think it's super likely, especially since the surprise model is named Salinte, which yes, does mean cheers, which could have anniversary connotations, but they aren't doing a whole lot for their 70th anniversary in BreyerFest to begin with. They actually really haven't done anything with their 70th anniversary in the BreyerFest theme this year, aside from having an extra vintage mold in the special run lineup, which is why I believe the surprise model will have a lot more to do with the BreyerFest theme than their anniversary, especially if we look at the BreyerFest surprise models of the past. Last year in 2019 and 2018, both surprise models fit well into the theme, as well as the ones from 2016, 2015, 2013, and 2012. The BreyerFest themes in 2011 and 2014 were so broad that nearly any mold could have worked for the theme, so those also do kind of count. The only outlier of sorts for the surprise model has been the 2017 Bollywood Surprise, which was on a stock horse mold for the Gateway to India theme. But all of the other surprise horses have matched their themes very well. You also may notice that I didn't mention the 2009 surprise horse, and the reason for that is because I don't really count that one in these videos when figuring out the surprise model, because it was kind of like a test run for Breyer on the surprise horse idea, and this particular model doesn't follow a lot of the same patterns as the other surprise models have. Considering that the majority of BreyerFest surprise models have related to the theme, and that this year's BreyerFest is especially using models that relate to the theme, I'd bet money that the Sláinte Surprise is going to be on a mold that's related to Celtic Fling. But what exactly would be considered related to the Celtic theme? Well, before we start eliminating molds, let's talk about which breeds originated in Celtic regions and can therefore be considered Celtic. I won't go over all of the breeds listed for Celtic nations because there are quite a lot, but I will go over the main ones that most people will recognize. For horse breeds, Ireland has the Irish Cob, aka the Gypsy Vanner or Tinker, the Irish Sport Horse, the Irish Draught, and the Connemara Pony. Scotland has the Clydesdale, the Shetland Pony, and the Highland Pony. Wales has the Welsh Pony and Cob. And then this can also include the British horse breeds, which are the Hackney, the Shire, the Thoroughbred, and the Suffolk Punch, and some other pony breeds. Anyway, the main takeaway from this is that the surprise model will likely be either a giraffe horse, a pony, or a warm blood. I don't think we'll be seeing a stock horse, a light breed, or a Spanish breed, as those don't really go with the theme. I know there is a light breed mold and a Spanish mold in the BreyerFest special runs, as well as the raffle models, but Breyer always mixes in a little of everything in BreyerFest. They never stick strictly to only one or two types of horses, no matter the theme. I will include a few non-Celtic breed-based molds on my preliminary list, but I'm really going to factor in the breed type when it comes to my top guesses. Let's get on to actually looking at the entire list of Breyer traditional molds now, and see what the top contenders are. On the first page here, there aren't really any that super stand out to me. The Marwari is the first mold I'm going to kind of include, but it's very tentative. I almost didn't even put him on this list, as I really don't think he's likely. His breed doesn't fit the theme at all, especially on the original Marwari version of this mold. On page 2, there's some possibilities on this page, nothing strong again, but I could maybe see the Arabian Mare, but the Make-A-Wish version of this mold more specifically, because it is very pony-like. So Make-A-Wish is on the list of possibilities. Not a strong possibility in my opinion, but maybe she's possible. I really can't see Rejoice or Forever Siege being the models this year, but I went ahead and put them on the list anyway because I do feel like they sort of fit the looks-wise to the theme of like cheers and stuff. So that's why they're tentatively put on the list, but they're very, very low at the bottom of the list here. I almost considered Misty because of her mold being a pony, but I also don't really see it. It'd be really cute if she was with her foal Stormy and they were like a little set of mare and foal for the surprise. But they already have a pony, mare, and foal set this year as special runs, so I don't think they would do that again for the surprise model. On the third page, I didn't mark any of these ones down. None of these were really possible ones that fit the breed. There's nothing really notable on page number 4 either, except maybe Bluegrass Bandit. Her breed doesn't fit. She kind of just joins Rejoice and Forever Siege at the bottom of the list. I'm really not quite sure why I even put these guys on there. Honestly, they're just kind of thrown on there because, I don't know. Big Ben and the Peruvian Paso are very slightly possible, but Big Ben feels a little too unpopular even if he is on the 70th anniversary logo, and the Paso just does not fit the breed at all. Page number 5, not much for this one either except for Bristol. Bristol is kind of another tentative one to add, considering he was the Seattle Soiree event model this year. He would be a good fit for the theme, but I'm not really quite seeing it, honestly. I know people have been speculating that Bridie and Bristol will be the surprise models because they appeared on the BreyerFest t-shirts, as did Bouncer and Brishan, but I think they were put on there because their molds start with the letter B, and people generally like these molds. I really don't think either of them will show up as the surprise models, and I don't think Breyer would just up and put the surprise model on a t-shirt. At least they haven't done anything like that before with the surprise and BreyerFest swag. I feel like that would give it away a little bit too easily. On to page number 6. Actually, there's a couple possibilities here, some fairly good ones. There is the Cantering Warm Blood, Cigar, and Cleveland Bay. The 3 C's. The Cantering Warm Blood and the Cleveland Bay both fit the theme very well. However, the Cleveland Bay was the celebration horse at BreyerFest last year, and the Cantering Warm Blood recently came out as a brick and mortar special. Now, these two things don't necessarily eliminate these molds, but it is something to consider, especially in the case of the Cleveland Bay. The only reason I'm putting him on the list actually is because he fits the theme so well. Then there is Cigar, who is actually a pretty high possibility. He's been used as a regular run in recent years, but the last and only time he was a BreyerFest special run was in 2012. He's a thoroughbred, and Breyer hasn't done any thoroughbreds for this BreyerFest year so far. Post-recording editing Stormy here. I don't know why, but I completely skipped Ruffian when making this video. I somehow skimmed over her. I guess I thought that she couldn't be the surprise model for this year, probably because I've been getting BreyerFest 2018 and 2019 models mixed up a bit. And I guess I thought that she was a special run last year or something when she was not. So I didn't notice until too late into working on this video that she is actually a pretty strong possibility, and if I would have noticed sooner, I probably would have even had her on my top 10 list. But I really didn't want to take out the time to re-record such a big section of the video to try and fit her in. So I've decided not to do that, and that is why Ruffian has not been mentioned past this part in the video. I'm really sorry about that, but hopefully you guys can keep her in mind when you are making your own guesses about the surprise model. And again, I'm sorry I completely missed her when taking into account my guesses for the surprise, because I think she does actually have a pretty good chance of being the surprise model. Page number 7 has some things to talk about. Now, the Connemara mare was one that a lot of people were already guessing and hoping for as the surprise, but then a mini version of this mold was released as a stablemate for the single-day tickets this year, which very well could mean that she is eliminated from being the surprise model. We don't really know because shrunken stablemate versions of molds is a fairly relatively new thing. I don't know if that would affect the use of their traditional scale models. So she is a very tentative addition to this list. I do not have high hopes for her being the surprise. Destado! I don't really see it being Destado. The breed doesn't fit, but the pose does fit the, Cheers idea about the surprise. But, he's one of those ones that just gets kind of thrown on the list for whatever reason with, Forever Siege and Bluegrass Bandit and stuff. It's like my this is possible, but I highly doubt it list. Then we get to Salinero. Now, this mold is a very good contender. I actually picked this mold as my #1 guess for the surprise last year. This mold is popular, and he hasn't been used a lot lately aside from a recent regular run. He's one of the stronger contenders on this list. On to page number 8. Nothing really notable here. We have a pony that would almost work, but unless Breyer decided to put the fell pony and another pony together as the surprise or something, people would not really be happy about the surprise being $85 if it was just one little pony. Page number 9, only slight possibility on here is Silver. He was a store special last year, however, but he does work well for the Cheers theme, even though he is a Mustang, which is a stock horse, which doesn't really fit the theme in that regard. He's not going to be high up on my list of possibilities either. The Shire Mare would be cool, but she's only been made in crystal and porcelain. Unless they surprise us with a brand new plastic release, they aren't going to be doing porcelain surprise models of her. Number 10 page, there are 2 possibilities on here. Giselle is one. I know I've been guessing Giselle for what feels like forever as the surprise horse. She's once again being put on the list. She's a warm blood, so she fits the theme, and she really isn't used a whole bunch. Gofford is another addition. The limited edition Crystalline recently came out, but this mold does make for a really great Irish cob. Page number 11 has absolutely nothing on here, so on to page 12. Huckleberry Bay is another one of those kind of at the very bottom of the guessing list models. His breed doesn't fit the theme, but it does kind of fit the surprise Salinte Cheers thing. Kind of, I don't know. I did not pick Secession or the Icelandic on here. Now, the Icelandic also again has that small pony problem. It is a higher possibility because of its breed, but unless they paired it with the fell pony, I don't think people would be happy about paying $85 for one little Icelandic. There is one big mold possibility on this page, which is Totalis. His main drawback, though, is that he was used as the volunteer model last year, and used quite a bit in 2017 and 2018. But he also fits the theme super well. On page 13, more strong possibilities are Vallegro, Carrick, and Idacus. Or Idacus? I don't know how you pronounce his name, I always forget. Vallegro is a strong contender. It's had several releases over the past 5 years, but not like a huge amount. However, he was used as a web special at the end of last year, 2019. He does fit the theme super duper well. The same can pretty much be said for the Walking Thoroughbred or Carrick mold. He could represent English Thoroughbreds breed-wise or another warm blood. Last on this page is Idicus. Now Idicus, maybe it's Idicus, was recently used as a Seattle Surrey model, which might lessen its chances, but it is still a good mold for the theme. It's only been used as a BreyerFest special run once back in 2009, and he does have those really fun mane and tail variations that could be incorporated into the surprise model. On page 14, there's two last ones that I think are a possibility, one of which has a much higher possibility, is Wixom. She definitely works for the theme, being a big draft horse and all. Bobby Joe is another one of those kind of tentative ones. I actually don't even really know why I put her on this list, but for whatever reason, I put her on there. The final page, number 15, doesn't have anything. And then that is it. That leaves us with a total of 22 possible molds. I think that's a tad less than what I picked last year at least. A lot of these molds are not strong contenders and will not be moving on into the top 10 list of possibilities, which I'm going to narrow down now. So I picked out my top 10 mold possibilities, which leaves the 12 molds out. The following molds are the ones that I left off of the top 10 list. These are all a possibility to some degree or another, but just not enough to make the actual top list. Some of them are just really very bottom of the barrel choices in way of what I think is going to be the surprise model. So the molds on the bottom of the list are in alphabetical order: Bluegrass Bandit, Bobby Joe, Bristol, Connemara Mare, Cleveland Bay, Destado, Forever Siege, Huckleberry Bay, Marwari, Make-A-Wish, Silver, and Rejoice. Now let's go over my top 10 mold choices, starting with number 10. Number 10 is Goffert. While this mold would make a great Irish cob, it was just recently released as crystalline, as I already mentioned. And I also just don't have a really strong feeling that they'll use it, considering they already have the two Irish cob models, which are Cheesecake and the Diorama Contest Prize model. I don't believe they actually assigned a breed to that guy, but he is basically an Irish cob or Gypsy Vanner. For number 9, I picked Idicus. Now, the biggest drawback for this mold is that he was used as a model in the Seattle Surrey, which was supposed to take place in May. The Collector Club event, the Big Easy Bash in 2014, did have a model on the Lonesome Glory mold, and that model was then used as the surprise model in 2015 BreyerFest. But that was still over a year between the use of the model, not in this particular case where it's only been a couple months, which is why I don't think models that were used as Seattle Surrey models are going to be the surprise model. At least I think it's pretty unlikely, and that is why Idicus doesn't have a higher spot on this list, although otherwise he does really nicely fit the theme. My number 8 pick is Wixom. Now Wixom is a good draft horse and therefore a good horse for the theme. However, she does have some little drawbacks. There have been quite a few draft models already in Breyer's lineup this year. They have 2 draft special run models, 2 draft type store specials, and even a draft classic in the pop-up shop. Now, it could be argued that that means that they won't add another draft, or it could be argued that they favor draft horses this year and would make the surprise horse a draft. The rest of the models on my top 10 list are warm bloods, and while there are 2 warm bloods in the special runs already and the celebration horse is a warm blood, 3 traditional warm bloods is a little less compared to the 4 traditional drafters and 1 classic draft. Although again, I think an argument could be made either way on whether it would be more likely for them to add another draft horse or not. Wixom did come out as a Halloween model last year. I don't feel that affects her chances as much as some of the other models on this list, where they have come out as new releases in 2020, but it is something to consider. My last point of uncertainty is her popularity and her size. She is not exactly an unpopular model, but she also doesn't seem to generally have a huge fan base. I have also heard the question pop up if she is just too big and too much plastic to be a surprise model, which I'm not really sure on this take. Breyer has done some models that take up a little bit more space as the surprise model, like Nakota for example. So I don't know if her size would really affect her being used as the surprise or not. My number 7 pick is the Cantering Warmblood. This mold is fantastic for the theme, But this guy suffers from the problem of having been used as Lionel the brick and mortar store dealer special this year, which I think does lessen his chances of being used. I definitely see this model becoming a surprise model at some point in time because his mold is just awesome and popular, but I don't see it being a super strong possibility this year. He is great for the theme and a beloved mold, which is why he is where he is on this list. Number 6 is Giselle. I've had this mare in my top list of possibilities several times now, and that's because there really isn't anything to point out that says she can't be the surprise model. She's on a mold that fits the theme, she's not used very much, even though she came out way back in 2008. Her most recent release was as a web special in early May 2019, and the one time she was a BreyerFest special run was back in 2010. The reason I didn't put her any higher on this list is mainly just how I feel about her fitting the overall mood of the theme this year. I don't know how to explain it, I just don't really have a strong feeling that she'll be used, but she is fairly high up on this list. So now we are on to my top 5 list. All 5 of these models are warm bloods, and I do have a strong feeling that the surprise model will be a warm blood this year. For the number 5 spot, I put Totalis. He would have been higher up on this list, but since he's just coming out as a 2020 mid-year release regular run, I think that does lower his chances of being the surprise horse quite a bit. He was also used as a volunteer model in 2019. In the past, a volunteer model has become a BreyerFest surprise model the following year. The one time that happened was in 2012. The Roxy mold was used as a BreyerFest volunteer model, and then in 2013 she was the CC Shuffle surprise model. Therefore, it is very possible he could still be used as a surprise model this year, even though he was the volunteer model at BreyerFest last year. This mold really fits the breed criteria. He feels like he's dancing and celebrating. I also really like this mold, so I would definitely not be disappointed if he did end up being the surprise model. Number 4 is Cigar. The last release of this guy was the regular run California Chrome in 2018. This mold has had a bunch of portrait models released on it and many other releases over the past 2 decades, but I could see this guy coming out as the surprise horse in some really fun flashy colors that we've never seen on this mold before. He is a thoroughbred, which counts for the Celtic breed. He might also be a kind of nice model for the anniversary theme because he is a little bit of an older mold. He's actually considered to be vintage now because he came out in 1999. Breyer does tend to favor those slightly older modern molds as surprise models, like the Andalusian in 2019 and Smarty Jones in 2018. Both came out in 2004, and then there were 4 other surprise horse molds which were originally introduced before 2010. So I think that's also something to keep in mind. I also gotta say that it is really neck and neck between all of these top 4 choices. I could really easily sway my decision between them because these top 4 models are all really good candidates, especially these top 3 though, which without further ado, here's my top 3 picks for the 2020 surprise model. Number 3, the Walking Thoroughbred or Carrick. There is nothing holding against him for being the surprise model. There hasn't been any new 2020 or even 2019 releases on this mold. The last time he was released was as a regular run Justify model, and then shortly before that as the 2018 BreyerFest Celebration model. I think he has a pretty good shot at being the surprise horse mold. I think he'd pull off some really fun colors like he did as the special run model Bonafette in 2014. I would not be surprised at all if he ended up being the surprise model. Now these last 2 models, I've honestly been switching back and forth with several times while making this video. I've changed my mind several times on which of these models is my number 1 pick and which one's my number 2. I even changed it again right before I started recording this video. So keep that in mind that these 2 are so neck and neck that I honestly don't know. My top choice is really both of these models. The 2 molds that I picked as my number 1 and number 2 both look like they could be dancing in celebration. They would both look amazing in fun special run colors. Oh my gosh, it is just so difficult to choose. And while I'm editing this video, I might even change my mind again on which one should be the first one and which one should be the second one. But without further ado, my number 2 pick is Salinero. This guy doesn't have anything holding him back in the way of recent releases. He was used as a Collector Club Appreciation model in 2019, but that was a glossy version of a 2018 regular run, so I feel like that doesn't really super count. He's also only been used as a BreyerFest special run once before in 2008. I think he is super well overdue for being a BreyerFest special run model. In post-editing, Stormy here again, and I actually did almost change my choices on the number 1 and number 2 pick again on here, because I realized something while I was editing that I didn't realize when I was writing this script. Now, one of the main reasons why I put this Salinero mold in the second place was because of the Hanoverian brand stamped in it, and I didn't even realize that they actually do have a version of the mold that does not have the Hanoverian stamp. So there's really no reason I can think of for this guy to not be the surprise model. So I'm almost considering putting him in my number 1 spot because of this. And another thing that I forgot about, which is that the original model's name that was first released on this mold is called Celtic Salinero, which obviously that does kind of fit really well with the Celtic Fling. Now, Celtic Salinero is spelled differently than the regular Celtic with a C and stuff, but it is still something to think about. I don't know if that's a little bit maybe too obvious for Breyer to do the model as Celtic Salinero, but it's something to definitely think about, and it was something that almost pushed me over into putting this model in my top pick again. So there is that information for you guys, and I'm glad I caught this before I put it out, because I'm sure some of you would have said, hey, wait a second, they do actually have a version of the mold where it doesn't have the Hanoverian brand stamped in it. So the more you know. Anyway, back on to the video. I also don't feel like he is saying Sláinte or cheers as much as the number 1 pick here. So without further ado, my number 1 pick for this year's BreyerFest surprise model is Vallegro. Now this guy does have one thing that is kind of holding him back a tiny bit, which is that he was a web special in the fall of 2019. I do think that kind of hurts his chances just a little bit, but the Andalusian Stallion last year was used as a limited edition regular run in 2018, so who knows, that might actually not really affect him too much as not being able to be the surprise model. This model was also used as a BreyerFest special run in 2017, but since that was 3 years ago, that's definitely enough time for them to reuse him as a special run. He hasn't had a huge amount of releases since he came out. He's had 2 regular run releases and then 1 other web special release, besides the web special release in 2019. But the main reason I decided to pick this guy as my number 1 choice is because of his pose. He looks like he is dancing or especially cheering, and he would also make a nice little Irish sport horse. Therefore, I think he does just kind of check all those boxes in the way of theme. He's a warm blood, he looks like he's cheering. He hasn't had any releases this year or at last year's BreyerFest that stop him from being the surprise horse. I feel like the Vallegro mold is also pretty popular, so he's good on that front as well. So there you have it, that is my top guess. I personally do hope that it is Vallegro. I only have 1 model in this mold, and I don't think I even ever took him out of his box yet. But I do like this mold, and I think the fun kind of flashy colors they could put on him would be super awesome. Now from these top picks, I know these 2 top molds were my same 2 top picks last year as well. In fact, Cigar also had the number 4 spot on my list last year. I've had a lot of the same picks, I know. And there are reasons I keep picking the same molds, as I've already explained in going over each one. Unless something comes up that completely rules a mold out, I just can really see Breyer using any of these molds, especially these top 4 or 5 molds that I picked. Now before we move on to talking about colors of the surprise model, I do need to bring up another factor that is sort of not a factor. Last year, I went ahead and tried out using a trend that the mold the surprise model was going to be on a mold in the live auction the previous year. For example, the Dark Horse Surprise in 2018 was a live auction model in 2017. Well, it turns out that that trend is no longer valid, as the 2019 Heroes Welcome Surprise Andalusian Stallion was not in the 2018 live auction. That trend being true for a while was merely a coincidence, So I completely ignored that pattern when picking my top guesses for this year, because it is no longer a valid pattern. But if you guys were curious and wanted to know which molds were in the live or silent auction last year at BreyerFest that were also in my top 10 list this year, there was Giselle, Goffard, and Totalis were live auction models, and Vallegro was a silent auction model. I still strongly believe that it's purely coincidence that models on the same mold show up as one-of-a-kinds in the previous year. But, you know, you never know. Maybe it is kind of a pattern to watch out for. Even though it didn't work out last year, maybe that was just a weird time it didn't work out. I don't know. Remember, this is all just speculation and trying to follow patterns and stuff. We don't really know for sure about these things. But now that we've had all that talk about molds, lastly, we need to talk about colors. For a long time, it was 4 different colors for the Surprise model, not counting the matte and glossy variations. But starting in 2018, they bumped it up to 5 color variations. Last year in 2019, they did have 6 color variations, but that was because they added the special BreyerFest 30th anniversary variations into all of the special runs. They will very likely have 5 colors of the Surprise model again this year. It is possible they could add another and do 6, but my guess is that they will most likely do 5. Although it's important to keep in mind that the Surprise model quantities have been bumped up by another 250 models this year. But I don't know if that's a big enough bump up to suggest that they added a 6th color. Then again, they did bump up the numbers from 2017 to 2018 by only 200 models. And that is when they decided to add a 5th color to the previous 4-color lineup. But they also have been raising the Surprise horse quantities in general every year, so who knows if that is enough of a number increase to indicate that there will be another color or not, or if it just means they're making more of them to make sure everybody has a good chance at getting a Surprise model. There are some other interesting things to note, and I know this is right now kind of being more about numbers than actually the colors themselves, but don't worry, we'll get to those colors in a moment. In the way of finishes, Breyer has been increasing the number of glossy models within each color each year. In 2016, it was 149 of each model was glossy. In 2017, it was 175. In 2018, it was also 175, but they raised it again to 200 in 2019. Maybe they won't raise it again this year, but we can generally expect that there will probably be at least 200 glossy versions of each color, or at least mostly of each color. There's something interesting that happened last year. However, this hasn't really happened before, at least not since 2011. There was one color variation of the Surprise, which was the Decorator, that did not have both finishes. It was only matte. It is something to think about and wonder if the Decorator this year will have 2 finishes, or will it only show up as 1? Would they ever have only 1 finish of one of the other colors? Who knows? But that's enough about the numbers. Let's actually talk about those colors. I kind of categorize these into 4 main types of colors, and generally there is at least 3 of these, and sometimes all 4 of them, that pop up as Surprise model colors. Those 4 colors are a solid colored model, a Pinto, an Appaloosa, and a Decorator. Last year was interesting because they had 3 solid colored models. Usually when they do multiples of the same kind of color, they do multiples of Pintos. But last year it was those 3 Dappled Heroes Welcome Surprise models. I'm not sure what to expect this year in the way of a solid colored model. Maybe a Palomino or something more rare like a Cremello. Or maybe a pretty shaded black like they did in 2018. I do doubt that they will do just a plain bay or chestnut, as they seem to stay away from those as the Surprise model colors. They try to give you at least something a little bit more interesting than just the typical bay or chestnut you would find on a regular run release of these models. It's possible they could also do something like a roan maybe. They haven't really done roans, I don't think, as a solid colored BreyerFest Surprise model. At least not off the top of my head here. That would also be cool if they did a solid colored roan. Something I doubt they would do as the solid color, but would be super crazy awesome if they did, is if they did a solid colored model but painted him like he was clipped, like they did for the Cleveland Bay Web Special Patty. That would be super awesome if they did something like that. I would like to see Breyer do more models that look like they're clipped. For Appaloosas, they've technically done Leopard Appaloosas the last 2 years in a row for the Surprise model. So I wonder if they will switch it up to maybe a blanket appy, or maybe a Pentolusa like they did in 2017. For Pentos, maybe they would do an Overo this time around, since they have done like an extensive Tobiano last year. And then in 2018, they did a minimal splash and a Tobiano. So maybe this year they'll do an Overo. I would love it, however, if they did do a more dramatic splash paint, because I do love me some splash Pentos. Also, I'm sorry I'm not getting even more specific on like the colors of these patterns of Pentos and Appaloosas, by the way. I'm really tired and this video has been a lot of work and is probably already crazy long and I'm trying to just get through it at this point. Lastly, and I think the most fun to guess about, is the decorator. Now they have done 2 decorators now as pop-up store models, so I wonder if they're going to stray away from the green theme and do something different. Now, an obvious thing to do with this theme is something with leprechauns. More specifically, what if they did a gold or rainbow decorator? Both gold and rainbow are popular decorator colors. I personally would especially be all over a rainbow decorator. Another idea is that maybe they would do something with Celtic knots, since they've only done the one little stablemate with Celtic knots so far. But maybe they won't do it in just green and have like other couple colors mixed in, like blue and gold. Make some sort of interesting Celtic knot thing, maybe something with clear wear. My final thought is, what if they did a green deco color, but it was kind of like that test patty model Breyer showed in a Collector Club newsletter that was a light green Pinto? Something like that would also be really neat as a decorator model. I think this is a really fun color to think about, as the possibilities for it are really endless. And I hope they do something really fun for it with the theme. Last year's Surprise Decorator was popular, but I was honestly not a fan of him at all. But then in 2018, the decorator wasn't very popular, and I absolutely adore that decorator model. He's like one of my top favorite non-animal colored decorators. So I'm personally hoping for something theme-related that's really bright and colorful and fun, like a horse with rainbows or 4-leaf clovers on it, or like that test run patty. Something fun with that and not just kind of a generic random decorator color. But that now leads us to the part of the video where I want to know what you think. What do you think the surprise model decorator color will be, assuming that there will be a decorator in the lineup? What other colors do you think the surprise model will be? And of course, let me know what mold you think the surprise horse will be on. Do you agree that one of my top 10 mold guesses will be the surprise, or do you think it will be something completely different? Please let me know what you think in the comments below. I love hearing your guys' thoughts and predictions about the surprise model. That wraps up this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I do have other BreyerFest videos coming out soon, along with all the fun that will be taking place online right before BreyerFest with my Celtic Celebration Week. There will be live streams, games, and giveaways, all free, that anyone can participate in. I also recently surpassed 20,000 subscribers, so I will be trying to mix in some extra things during the celebration week to celebrate that awesome milestone with you guys as well. Links where you can find all of that information are posted in the video description down below. I hope you all have an awesome day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye everyone!